The space station Harmony Prime hung like a silver wheel against the endless black of space. Its massive rings gleamed under distant starlight, a testament to galactic engineering and the promise of peace. Inside this floating marvel, Jadwan Park adjusted his navy blue diplomatic suit and took a deep breath. He looked ordinary. Not too tall, not too short. His black hair was neatly combed, his face calm and smooth. Most aliens passing by would have seen just another human diplomat. Forgettable, unremarkable. But looks could be very deceiving. The main conference hall buzzed with alien languages. Translators hummed, converting complex sounds into understandable speech. Delegates from 100 different species moved about, their bodies ranging from humanoid to shapes that would make Earth biologists scratch their heads in confusion. Floating creatures with tentacles stood next to insectoid beings. Crystalline entities communicated through light pulses, and in the middle of this cosmic gathering, Jae-hwan walked with quiet confidence. A Trill representative, a tall blue-skinned being with intricate patterns covering her skin, glanced at him. Her 3 eyes scanned him quickly, then moved on. Just another human, her dismissive look suggested. Jae-hwan knew this look well. Humans were the newcomers in the galactic community, barely 60 years into interstellar travel. Most older species saw them as children playing with technology they barely understood. He approached the registration desk, his movements smooth and controlled. The robotic attendant, a sleek machine with multiple arms, processed his credentials. Holographic screens flickered with his details. Jae-hwan Park, Earth Diplomatic Corps, Sector 7 representative. What the screens didn't show was far more interesting. The conference was about trade routes in the contested Omega Quadrant. Multiple species wanted access to rich mineral systems and strategic jump points. Negotiations would be tense. Billions of credits and decades of potential conflict hung in the balance. Jae-hwan's datapad buzzed. A message from Earth's diplomatic command. Maintain neutral stance. Protect human interests. Simple instructions, but nothing was ever truly simple in galactic politics. He walked past a group of Krillian delegates. They were impressive creatures, tall with exoskeletal armor that looked like polished obsidian. Their compound eyes tracked his movement briefly before returning to their own conversations. They spoke in low clicks and whistles, discussing strategies that would reshape entire star systems. The conference hall was a marvel of design. Gravity generators allowed different species to feel comfortable. Atmospheric processors created breathable environments for beings with wildly different respiratory systems. Transparent sections of the wall revealed the stunning view of space, distant planets, swirling nebulae, and the infinite darkness between stars. Jae-hwan found his assigned seat. Around him, diplomats from the Andromeda Collective, the Silicon Consciousness, and the merchant guilds of Proxima prepared their arguments. Each species had its own agenda, its own hopes, its own hidden weapons. Little did they know, the most dangerous weapon in the room wasn't a plasma cannon or a quantum disruptor. It was the calm human in the navy blue suit, watching and waiting. The first session was about to begin, and nothing would be the same after today. The reception hall glittered with holographic displays and alien beverages. Soft music played, a mix of electronic tones, and what sounded like wind through crystal pipes. Jae-hwan stood near a large window, watching the stars and sipping a clear liquid that looked like water, but definitely was not. Nobody noticed the shadows moving at the edge of the room. 4 figures, Krillian assassins, had somehow bypassed the station's security systems. Their exoskeletal armor was coated with light-bending technology, making them nearly invisible to standard detection equipment. The lead assassin, a veteran named Kral, signaled to his team. 3 quick movements, 3 different attack points. Their mission was simple: eliminate the human diplomat before he could cause more problems for the Krillian Imperium. Jae-hwan continued to look relaxed. His eyes, however, were doing something very different from relaxing. They were scanning, calculating, watching reflections, tracking movements that nobody else could see. The first assassin moved. A plasma weapon emerged from a hidden compartment in its armor. The weapon was silent, deadly. It could vaporize a human body in less than a second. The assassin aimed at Jae-won's back, certain of a clean kill. What happened next was not what anyone expected. Before the weapon could charge, Jae-won moved. Not a panicked movement, not a surprise reaction, but a calculated, precise shift of his body. The plasma blast missed him by millimeters. In the same moment, his hand, which seemed to be holding nothing, suddenly held a small device. The other diplomats were still talking. The music was still playing, but something had changed in the room. The second assassin lunged from the left side. Its weapon was different, a molecular disruptor that could break down organic matter at the atomic level. Again, Jae-won was ready. He stepped aside with impossible speed, and the assassin's momentum carried it forward. A quick movement, a precise strike. The assassin dropped, disabled but not killed. Krell, the lead assassin, realized something was very wrong. This was not a normal human diplomat. This was something else entirely. Station security was slow. Their sensors were confused. The assassin's advanced camouflage was interfering with standard detection systems, but Jae-won's movements were crystal clear. The third assassin never even got a chance to attack. Before it could raise its weapon, Jae-won was already moving. A series of strikes so fast they were almost invisible. The assassin collapsed, its advanced combat systems completely shut down. Delegates from other species started to notice something was happening. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. The music continued to play, a strange backdrop to the sudden violence. Krell was the last one standing. He understood now that they had made a terrible mistake. This human was not just a diplomat. He was something far more dangerous. Security robots finally arrived. Jae-won stood perfectly calm, surrounded by disabled assassins. His Navy diplomatic suit wasn't even wrinkled. A small smile played on his lips. The station's AI began to analyze the scene. Holographic recordings started to play, showing the incredible sequence of events. But something was strange about the recordings. They seemed to show different versions of what had just happened. Jae-won adjusted his suit and waited. The real story was just beginning. 5 years earlier, a small human colony on the edge of explored space. Dust storms raged outside the settlement's protective walls. Inside a command center, Jae-won looked different. Not the calm diplomat, but a military commander with fire in his eyes. His hands moved quickly over holographic displays, tracking something dangerous. The colony of New Hope was under attack. Pirates. Not just any pirates, the worst kind. Organized, brutal, well-armed. They had been hunting human settlements for months, thinking humans were easy targets. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jae-won's team was small, just 43 trained soldiers. They were facing over 300 heavily armed pirate vessels. The odds were impossible. Most military commanders would have surrendered. Most would have called for evacuation. Jae-won did neither. "Prepare defensive positions," he said into his communication device. His voice was calm. Too calm for a situation this desperate. The other soldiers knew that calm. It meant something big was coming. The first wave of pirate ships attacked. Massive energy weapons cut through the colony's outer defenses. Explosions lit up the dust-covered landscape. But Jae-won had a plan. A crazy plan that nobody else would have considered. Instead of defending, he would attack. His team used modified mining equipment, massive drilling machines that were never meant to be weapons. They turned these machines into something else, something unexpected. The pirates thought they were destroying a small human colony. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap. Jae-won's tactical computer calculated impossible trajectories. His soldiers moved with precision that seemed more like a dance than a battle. They used the planet's dust storms as cover. They used the pirate ship's own targeting systems against them. One by one, Pirate ships began to fall. Not destroyed. Disabled. Perfectly disabled. Each ship was taken out of the fight without killing the crew. J1 wanted them to live, to tell others what happened. By the end of 12 hours, 267 pirate vessels were completely disabled. The remaining pirates fled. They left behind technology, equipment, proof of their planned massacre. The official report was short. Too short. It mentioned a successful defense of the colony. What it didn't mention was how J1 had single-handedly planned and executed a defense that should have been impossible. Back in the present, on Harmony Prime, J1 adjusted his diplomatic suit. The assassins from earlier were being processed by station security. They had no idea about his past. Nobody here did. A message came through his personal communication device from Earth's diplomatic command. Excellent handling of the situation. Continue mission. The words were simple, but they meant something more. They knew. They always knew what he was capable of. Diplomatic corps had recruited him specifically because he was more than just a diplomat. He was a weapon, a shield, a strategy made human. The conference would continue. The Krillian delegates would be watching him now, wondering what had just happened, wondering who J1 Park really was, and he would give them nothing. Not yet. The conference hall fell silent. Station security had removed the disabled Krillian assassins, but everyone knew something big had just happened. J1 sat calmly, as if nothing unusual had occurred. A holographic display activated in the center of the room. The station's AI began to replay the assassination attempt. Slow motion, detailed analysis, every movement captured in perfect clarity. The Galactic Concordance representatives leaned forward. Their various forms, some humanoid, some completely alien, watched with intense curiosity. Humans were supposed to be the newcomers, the young species, the ones who didn't understand galactic politics. This didn't look like a young species anymore. J1 stood up. His movements were smooth, calculated. He walked to the central platform where diplomatic discussions happened. No one stopped him. No one could stop him. Distinguished representatives, he began, his voice clear and calm. The Krillian Imperium has committed a serious violation of diplomatic protocols. The Krillian delegates shifted uncomfortably. Their exoskeletal bodies seemed to shrink under the collective gaze of the conference. This was not going how they planned. J1's presentation began. Holographic evidence appeared, recordings from multiple angles, detailed technical analysis of the assassination attempt. The station's AI had captured everything. The assassins' approach, their advanced technology, their precise targeting. But it was the next piece of evidence that truly shocked everyone. A complete history of Krillian attacks on smaller colonies appeared, not just human colonies. Colonies from other species too. Systematic, planned, brutal. The Krillian Imperium had been playing a long game of quiet expansion through violence. These are not isolated incidents. J1 continued. This is a pattern of aggression. The Merchant Guild representatives began to whisper. Trade routes depended on stability. If the Krillians were truly this aggressive, it would change everything. One by one, other species began to speak. The Silicon Consciousness requested more data. The Andromeda Collective demanded an immediate investigation. The trade networks that the Krillians had carefully built began to shake. Krull, the lead assassin, was brought into the conference room. Restrained, defeated, his advanced technology was now being examined by every species present. What they found was shocking. The assassination equipment was advanced. Too advanced. It suggested the Krillians had been preparing something much bigger than just killing one human diplomat. J1 didn't say everything. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. With each passing moment, the Krillian Imperium's reputation crumbled. The station's diplomatic recorder captured everything, every word, every reaction. This would become a historic moment. We request a full investigation, J1 said finally. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room heard the steel underneath. The Galactic Concordance would meet. They would discuss. They would investigate. And the Krillian Imperium would never be the same again. Outside the conference hall, stars continued to shine. Space remained silent. But something had changed. Permanently. The Krillian Imperium was angry. Not just upset. Not just frustrated. Truly, deeply angry. Their most elite hunter-assassin units were assembled. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were the best of the best. Trained from birth. Augmented with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Each one could take down entire military bases alone. Their mission was simple: find and eliminate J1 Park. The first team disappeared 3 days after the conference. No signals, no traces, just gone. Their last communication was a brief burst of static and a single word: impossible. The second team lasted less than 48 hours. Galactic tracking systems showed nothing. No weapons discharge, no energy signatures, no signs of a battle. It was as if these highly trained assassins simply vanished into thin air. The Krillian Command Center became a place of growing panic. Each failed mission made J1 more legendary, more terrifying. Reports started to circulate, whispers in dark corners of space stations, stories of a human diplomat who was something more, something different. One surviving team member managed to send a partial transmission before disappearing. The recording was fragmented, broken, but clear enough to send chills through anyone who heard it. "He knew we were coming," the voice said, "before we even left." How did he know? The truth was both simpler and more complicated. J1 was not just waiting. He was hunting back. Each Krillian team that came for him became a message, a warning, a demonstration of something the Krillian Imperium had never understood about humans. Humans did not forget. Humans did not forgive. In a small office on Earth, a group of diplomats and military strategists watched the reports come in. They knew J1. They had chosen him for this exact reason. "He's dismantling them," one analyst said. "Not with weapons, with fear." The Krillian Imperium's reputation was crumbling. Their most elite units were vanishing. Their political influence was shrinking. And they couldn't stop it. J1 moved between diplomatic missions, sometimes on space stations, sometimes on colony worlds. Always calm, always watching, always one step ahead. The third team of assassins never even made it out of Krillian space. Something stopped them. Something they couldn't understand. Galactic news networks began to pick up the story. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said J1 was a special agent. Some said he was something more than human. The Krillian leadership argued, fought, blamed each other. Their perfect image of strength was breaking apart. One Krillian commander understood something the others did not. "He is not just fighting," she told her advisors. "He is sending a message, and we are not hearing it." In the vast darkness of space, J1 continued his quiet war. No weapons, no large battles, just a systematic destruction of an empire's confidence. The hunt continued, but who was hunting whom became less and less clear. And somewhere, in the cold silence between stars, J1 smiled. J1's desk was never what it seemed. To most, it looked like a simple diplomatic workspace. Clean, organized, boring. The truth was very different. Each item on the desk was a weapon. Not a physical weapon. Something more dangerous. Information. Connections. Secrets. His first move was economic. The Krillian Imperium had trade routes that looked perfect on paper. But J1 found the tiny cracks, the small weaknesses that nobody else saw. He started with shipping companies, small businesses that worked with Krillian trade networks. One by one, he helped them see the risks of doing business with an aggressive empire. Some received anonymous data about potential future problems. Others got insider information about coming trade restrictions. The results were quick. Within weeks, major trade routes began to shift. Companies that had worked with the Krillians for decades started to pull back. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The merchant guilds noticed. They always noticed when money was involved. Jadwan's next target was information. Not military secrets. Something more important. Political connections. He found the weak links in the Krillian political system. The politicians who were not fully committed. The leaders who had doubts. He didn't attack them. He gave them choices. Evidence appeared, sometimes in secure messages, sometimes in public channels. Evidence of corruption, of failed military operations, of promises broken. Some politicians jumped ship. Others became afraid. The Krillian Imperium's internal structure began to crack. On 3 different colony worlds, rebellious groups suddenly found support. Not military support. Something subtler. Information. Legal documents. Proof of government wrongdoing. The Krillian intelligence agencies went crazy trying to find the source. They looked for massive computer networks, for hidden military operations. They found nothing. Because Jadwan wasn't using massive systems, he was using something more powerful. Human creativity. Human connections. One diplomatic message here. One carefully placed document there. Small things that grew into big problems. The Galactic Concordance watched with interest. They had never seen anything like this before. This wasn't war. This wasn't diplomacy. This was something else. Jadwan's old military training showed in every move. But now his battlefield was different. Information was his weapon. Strategy was his strength. Krillian military bases found their supply chains disrupted, not by attacks, by paperwork, by legal challenges, by small groups asking too many questions. Communication networks began to fail, not because of direct attacks, but because trust was breaking down. The Krillian leadership started to panic. They sent more teams to find Jadwan, more assassins, more special agents. Each team disappeared faster than the last. In diplomatic circles, Jadwan remained calm, professional, always smiling, always polite. But behind that smile was a plan years in the making. The Krillian Imperium had no idea what was coming, and they were about to find out. The old holographic image flickered, a small colony, green fields, happy faces, a family photograph that Jadwan kept hidden in his most private files. New Hope Colony. Before the attack, his parents, his younger sister, his grandmother, all gone in a single day. Vaporized by Krillian warships during what they called a territorial expansion operation. The official report called it a misunderstanding. Jadwan called it murder. He remembered every detail of that day. How the colony's communication systems went silent. How the first plasma weapons cut through their protective shields. How his family had no chance. The Krillian Imperium thought no one would remember. They thought humans would forget. They were wrong. Every move Jadwan made now had a deeper purpose. This wasn't just diplomacy. This was revenge. He found the specific Krillian military unit responsible for the New Hope massacre. Not through military channels, not through official records, through patience, through connections, through years of quiet investigation. Unit Epsilon 9. 43 ships, 316 crew members. Each one had participated in the colony's destruction. Jadwan didn't want to kill them. That would be too easy. He wanted them to suffer, to understand what they had done. He began to dismantle their lives. Piece by piece, military records became public, not all at once. Slowly, carefully, each revelation more damaging than the last. The first Epsilon 9 crew member lost his military pension. Investigations revealed past corruptions, small things that, when connected, became big problems. The second found her family connections suddenly cut. Political allies disappeared. Support networks collapsed. One by one, the unit members watched their lives fall apart. not through violence, through something more painful, total systematic destruction. Some committed suicide. Some went mad. Some tried to run. But Jae-hwan was always watching, always one step ahead. He used diplomatic channels, legal systems, information networks. Each tool became a weapon. The Galactic Concordance began to ask questions. Why was this human diplomat so interested in a decades-old military operation? Why was he digging so deep? They didn't know about New Hope. They didn't know about the family photo that Jae-hwan kept hidden. By the time he was finished, Unit Epsilon 9 would be less than a memory. They would be a warning, a message to the Krillian Imperium. Humans might seem young in galactic politics, but they never forget. They never forgive. In his private moments, Jae-hwan would look at the old family photograph, his mother's smile, his father's strong hands, his sister's bright eyes. "I'm doing this for you," he would whisper. The Krillian Imperium thought they were powerful. They thought they could destroy a small human colony and face no consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. And Jae-hwan would make sure they learned that lesson completely. The human diplomatic course was changing. Everyone could feel it. What started with Jae-hwan had become something bigger, something unexpected. Humans were no longer seen as the new kids in galactic politics. They were becoming something else entirely. More human diplomats began to follow Jae-hwan's approach, not through direct orders, but through inspiration, through understanding that diplomacy could be a weapon more powerful than any battleship. Military leaders watched carefully. The old strategy of big guns and massive fleets was changing. Information was the new battlefield. Strategy was the new weapon. Earth's command centers began to shift. They sent more people like Jae-hwan to different parts of the galaxy. Not soldiers, not traditional diplomats. Something in between. The Andromeda Collective was the first to officially notice. They invited human diplomatic teams to more important meetings. They saw something different in how humans approached problems. Other species started to watch humans differently. The Silicon Consciousness began studying human communication patterns. They found something unique. Humans could think around problems. They could see solutions that other species missed. Jae-hwan's actions against the Krillian Imperium became a case study. Military academies began to teach his methods, not as a traditional military strategy, but as a new way of thinking about conflict. One small human colony could now challenge an entire galactic empire, not through massive weapons, but through intelligence, through connected thinking. The merchant guilds noticed something else. Human diplomatic teams were bringing new economic opportunities. They saw connections that others missed. They created trade routes that nobody had imagined before. Krillian communication networks began to collapse, not from direct attacks, but from the slow, steady pressure of human diplomatic strategy. Political leaders on different planets started to ask questions. How did humans do this? What made their approach so different? The answer was simple. Humans combined things that other species kept separate: military thinking, diplomatic skills, economic strategy, creative problem-solving. Jae-hwan became more than a person. He became a symbol, a representation of something new in galactic politics. Young humans in diplomatic schools began to study his methods. They saw a new path, a way to solve problems that didn't involve massive weapons or direct confrontation. The Galactic Concordance held special meetings. They wanted to understand what was happening. How could one species change so much, so quickly? Military experts from different planets began to rethink their strategies. The old ways of conquest were becoming less effective. Information, connection, strategy. These were the new weapons. Jae-hwan continued his work, always calm, always watching, always thinking several steps ahead. The Krillian Imperium was shrinking, not through war, but through something more powerful: total systemic breakdown. Humans were showing the galaxy something important. Power wasn't about the biggest weapons. Power was about understanding. about seeing connections, about being smarter than your opponent. And they were just getting started. The galaxy would never be the same again. The final conference was unlike any other in galactic history. Jaewon sat at the center of the massive circular table. Representatives from hundreds of species watched him, some with respect, some with fear, some with pure curiosity. The Krillian Imperium was broken, not destroyed, not defeated in battle, but systematically dismantled. Their political power reduced to almost nothing. "We are here," Jaewon began, "to discuss the future." His voice was calm, always calm. But everyone in the room understood the weight behind those words. The holographic displays showed what he had done, not through military might, but through careful, precise actions, economic pressure, information warfare, strategic diplomatic moves that had transformed the entire galactic political landscape. Evidence of Krillian war crimes, hidden trade agreements, illegal colony expansions. Everything was laid out, perfectly documented, impossible to deny. The Krillian representatives sat silent. Their once proud exoskeletal bodies now looked small, defeated. Other species watched carefully. The Andromeda Collective, the Silicon Consciousness, the merchant guilds. They saw something new happening, a different kind of conflict resolution. Jaewon spoke about the colony of New Hope, about the thousands of lives lost in senseless expansions, about the true cost of galactic conflict. But he didn't ask for punishment. He asked for change. Diplomacy, he said, is simply war by other means. The room fell completely silent. The Galactic Concordance representatives looked at each other. Something was changing. The old ways of solving problems were no longer working. Humans had shown them a new path. Compensation agreements were drafted, not through military tribunals, but through careful negotiation, economic restructuring, rehabilitation of damaged colonies. The Krillian Imperium would survive, but it would be different, smaller, more careful, more accountable. Jaewon's final recommendation was simple: a new set of galactic protocols, designed to prevent future conflicts, to protect smaller colonies, to create real accountability. No one could argue with his evidence. No one could challenge his logic. As the conference ended, something had changed. The entire galactic political structure had shifted, and it had happened without a single shot being fired. The human diplomatic court watched with pride. They understood what Jaewon had accomplished. He walked out of the conference hall, calm, collected, just another diplomat. But the galaxy knew different. Outside, the stars continued to shine, distant, silent, watching. Somewhere, on a small recording, his family's photograph waited, a reminder of why he had started this journey. The Baba Yaga of diplomacy had won, not through violence, but through something far more powerful: intelligence, strategy, understanding. The galaxy would never be the same.